as women, and this is obviously a generalization, but, we are pretty good at, assessing character.
Welcome to She Invests. Join us every week for conversations focused on the growing number of female angel investors, the real unicorns. You'll hear from existing female angel investors, VCs, and fund managers on their investment thesis. From deal flow to exits, they will share the best practices that contribute to their success. Female angel investors will be equipped with the tools and resources to confidently activate their capital in order to make an impact in their community and the global economy. With your host, active angel investor and founder of Hera Angels, Dr. Sylvia Ma.
Welcome to the She Invest podcast. Today we have the honor of having somebody who has really shaped the San Diego ecosystem and has just made inroads into making sure that there is a strong angel investing community in San Diego based on her partnerships and what she's done. So this is Allison Long Pettine. She is the founding partner of Seed San Diego, a premier venture group in San Diego that provides both capital and strategic value to startups developing disruptive technologies across multiple industries. Allison is also president and founder of Crescent Partners, a local seed stage venture fund. Prior to founding Crescent Partners, Allison was VP at Viscogliosi, did I say that right?
Yes.
Brothers, a New York-based venture capital company focused on cutting-edge orthopedic medical device technologies. Allison is also a mentor at Techstars, sits on the advisory board of UCSD, that is University of California, San Diego, the Basement Incubator, and is a committee member at EvoNexus and is on possibly every panel that I've thought about VCs and angels in San Diego. So welcome to the show, Allison.
Thanks, Sylvia. You were too kind. I think that intro have big shoes to fill now in this podcast.
Oh, no. We just want to learn more about you and more about what it has been to be a VC. Kind of like, what's your life as a VC and what are your perspectives and how it's done? Because we've heard a lot about angel investing, but not so much about VCs. And you are one of the VCs that I admire.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, so I started Crescent Partners, which is a seed stage venture fund in 2012. And I started it after working in venture capital. I worked at a small venture fund in New York City. And I also was on the operating side. I worked for one of our operating companies at the early stages. And so I started my own venture firm because I was just passionate about supporting visionaries and supporting innovation. And I think, your focus on this podcast is really understanding an angel's perspective and encouraging other females in particular to be angels. And I think part of what I went through when I decided to start Crescent Partners was just the whole notion of, am I ready? Can I do it? Even though I had been in the industry, I still had that self-doubt. And I think that is one thing a lot of females in particular face, is just this kind of uncertainty in themselves. And I think once I decided, actually, I had spoken to a fellow investor who I didn't know very well. He was actually a surgeon, and he was just giving me some career advice out of the kindness of his heart. And, he was asking me, not offensively, but just, very out of curiosity, like, why don't you feel like you're ready? He was like, you've had over, 6 years of experience at a venture firm. And, he's like, you could obviously go back and do that again. But there's nothing to stop you from doing it now. You're obviously qualified and you kind of understand what it takes. And he's like, just give it a shot. You can always go back to venture. And so I think I thought a lot about that every step along the way. When I kind of have this self-doubt, I always go back and say, okay, why do I have this self-doubt, and why don't I think I'm good enough or qualified enough? And I think for females, it's a very risky proposition to invest in early stage startups. I think at the end of the day, my desire to really be at the early stages of value creation kind of takes over that self-doubt. So that was a little bit meandering, but that's essentially why I started my own fund. And I think that, you know, there's different stages of investing as well. And I really like to focus on the early stages because there is the most uncertainty, but also it's, in my mind, the most fun because companies are the most malleable, and there's a lot that you can create at the early stages. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into my perspective.
I love that. I'm also an early stage investor, and I love that fun and that dynamics of creating that value in the marketplace and creating with somebody who's as passionate about their product that I am in investing in her.
Right.
I love that. I just want to ask one more question about the VC. If somebody is an angel investor and they're thinking about, let's say, I want to be a VC, I want to create my own fund, how does that really go about? Do you go around and you ask your colleagues, would you be willing to invest? Do you need to have an investment thesis before and communicate that investment thesis? How does that work on let's say, a minute level?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was, I was fortunate to be in the situation where I had, friends and family who believed in me. I mean, it's not dissimilar to an entrepreneur who's just starting their business that doesn't really have a track record, right? So I was able to convince a few people that, this is something that I'm passionate about and that I think that there's an opportunity. And also, this is a way to get exposure to an asset class that maybe they typically or historically hadn't had. So I think my situation is a little bit different. I wasn't going out and raising a huge fund. I think, I was really just going internally to people that I knew. And I think that, it just depends on where you can get the capital, right? Like it just like any business that starts. But yeah, I do think as you're continuing to raise more and more, then you do have to have a track record. You do have to show that you have a sound investment thesis. And there's just a lot of competition out there in terms of people who are raising a fund and where the dollars are going.
I love that. I think that has the same sort of effect as an entrepreneur, as you said, is that you need to build somewhere. And if you're building somewhere and you're building something small, let's say, that's okay as well.
Right.
I love that. Now, in that aspect of the investment thesis, one of your investment thesis was to invest in San Diego and SoCal. So what does that San Diego ecosystem look like? How has it built? Where is it going?
Yeah. So when I arrived, one of the reasons why I decided to focus on Southern California and San Diego is because I saw that there was just a huge need for capital, for early stage capital here. And especially a capital that was experienced and that could help, the entrepreneur along the way. So kind of what they refer to as smart money. And there was definitely pockets of it that existed. When I initially started Crescent Ridge Partners, I decided to focus on San Diego because I saw that there was a need for early stage capital here. There was very few investors who were focused on the early stages, and particularly very few investors who had experience building companies from the early stages, from the ground up, and also investing, quite frankly, in those type of deals. And so, it's San Diego is funny because it's a small community and everyone knows everyone else, but it's also very fragmented in the sense that a lot of people don't necessarily work together. So, all of us early stage investors, I mean, Sylvia, you and I know each other, and, we know the angel groups, and you see everyone around, but rarely do we kind of leverage each other's skill sets and then kind of have regular interactions with each other. And so that's actually one of the reasons why I founded Seed Seed San Diego is because I really wanted kind of a cohesive group where I could say, okay, there's a 4 other partners that I can draw on their skill sets that are complementary to mine. And, we're all looking at the same deals and we're all kind of generally thinking the same things, but let's build an infrastructure where we can talk to each other on a regular basis. And I think that's been working well, but at the same time, we need to do a better job of reaching beyond just the 5 of us, right? So that's one of the things that I'm focusing on over the next 12 months is how to leverage other investors in the community and, whether we can just create these regular communication channels. Because I think, the community, we're in San Diego, we're too small to compete. We will succeed as a city if we can syndicate successfully and work together on deals. And I think one of the things that's challenging is we have these geographic disparities, right? And so people are located all over San Diego. And so that makes natural connections and run-ins few and far between. And, we don't really get those kind of coffee shop talk or, these unintentional synergies, if you will. And I think that's something that is a disadvantage, but something that we can focus on and try and be better about.
And I think you do that really well because we've gone out to lunch and coffees throughout the years and really built a good collaboration between the two of us saying, hey, how do we build this better? We have this entrepreneur. How do we connect with her better? How do we connect her with others? So I think that's wonderful that you're building it that way.
And I think to your point about how San Diego has grown, I think you asked that question. I've seen a lot of maturity in the entrepreneurs here, and I think a good deal of it is because the resources that are available to entrepreneurs today are much more rich than they were 5 years ago. And case in point is what you started, right? I mean, you're one of the examples of an amazing resource down here. We have the Hair Venture Summit, which didn't exist when I was here 5 years ago. So I think there are a lot of people doing a lot of amazing things to help kind of foster innovation and build better entrepreneurs in San Diego, because we don't really have a lot of great exits and a lot of successful kind of repeat serial entrepreneurs like the Bay Area does. So, we all do our part.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the conversations that we've had in the last couple of years at even the panels that we've had or events that people put on is that we are not Silicon Valley. And who are we here? We do not have, let's say, those serial entrepreneurs, but how can we activate capital within San Diego to make it more robust?
Right. And I think that's one of the things also that you had mentioned, asked about what our investment thesis is. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to focus on at Seed San Diego is, can we invest in a way that correlates with what San Diego's strengths and personality are? And I think part of that is, we don't have access to, hundreds of millions of dollars, and we don't have kind of the talent and the visionaries that maybe the Bay Area or New York have. And so what do those types of companies look like? And how do we take baby steps in order to, nurture and breed those visionaries and the capital? And I think it's, you can't go from 0 to 100 overnight, right? And so for us at Seed, it's almost like we got to take a step back and say, yes, obviously we want to eventually get a home run and invest in, a unicorn. But is that going to happen over the next 2 years? Maybe not. Over the next, 7 to 10 years? Maybe. But we have to build that. And how do we build that?
And communicate that as well.
Right. Exactly. So there's, I think it's difficult because a lot of people read the media and they think all startups are the same and all valuations should be the same and, all exits should be the same. And the reality is that most companies exit for less than $50 million. And that doesn't mean they're not a successful exit, right? Like you can make just as much money off a $50 million exit as you can off a $500 million exit, depending on how much you raise. And sometimes you can even make more. And so I think it's all about understanding how to create as much value without going overboard, right? And kind of leveraging what we're really good at in San Diego, which is, a lot of companies are very capital efficient because they have to be, right? They're scrappy. We have a really loyal talent base down here. People don't jump from one company to another. A lot of times they'll stay with an organization for, 10 to 15 years. We have amazing culture. So a really collaborative culture. People like to work together, like to help each other. It's not, cutthroat. And then, there's obviously a very balanced work life as well, which I think some people argue doesn't, you should be working 100 hours a week. But I think here we can enjoy, work life outside of work and still be productive. So
I love all those points because that's what makes that ecosystem thrive, is that we understand each other and we collaborate. And can you think about anything that has been a win, a really good win for San Diego so far?
We have had a few good wins. The most recent probably was Nirvana Systems. They were a few senior level engineers out of Qualcomm that started their own AI platform and ended up selling to Intel for, I think, $400 million in less than 2 years. I think that exit was last year, I believe. So, we have had some really good exits, and there are some really smart people down here. So it's starting to happen.
Wonderful. And also, I know that Craig Venture Institute was able to acquire a really early stage company from Rady School of Management.
Yeah, Human Longevity, right?
Yes.
Acquired Cypher Genomics, which was a big win as well. So, yeah, both biotech and technology. And then also, we have a lot of wins on the early stage stuff too. And, there was a company called Quickfire that was founded by Craig Lee, which was sold to Facebook before they raised their Series A. One of the companies that we invested in, Limber, was recently sold to MindBody, also before they raised their Series A. So, I think the more kind of earlier stage stuff that we can build and sell quickly in less than a year or two, that creates immense value because it's, the capital requirement to get it up and started is pretty low. And then the capital that we get back from the exit can get refunneled into building new companies.
Yeah, I love that because then that's how we grow that ecosystem. And organizations like San Diego Venture Group and MIT Enterprise Forum and Tech Coast Angels, whenever they have events and pitch sessions, also help with connecting certain entrepreneurs to the right angels.
Yeah, and I think it's more of, just everyone working together. I think Mike Credit, to your point, at San Diego Venture Group has done an amazing job of bringing together community as well as bringing capital outside of San Diego to come see what we're doing here.
Yeah, I feel like for myself as well, and I know C does the same thing, is that communication piece to other syndication partners across the United States. And that's how we're going to grow because, as you said, the San Diego ecosystem is small, and we have to leverage each other, and we have to leverage our networks outside to syndicate the right entrepreneurs.
Exactly.
Perfect. So what do you see in the future now that we've kind of delved into what the ecosystem looks like and what have been our wins? What do you see in the future for San Diego and SoCal?
I think San Diego is on its way to garnering a lot of attention in the early stage startup world. I think more entrepreneurs are moving down here. There's a lot of people who have had success as entrepreneurs that have second homes here or that have made this their primary residence. And so I think the more that we can get those people involved, the richer of a community that we can build. I mean, this is my hope. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I think I can, one day I can see all of the large tech companies, in the Bay Area wanting to have a presence in San Diego. And I think that's already starting to happen, with Google and Amazon because of, some of the characteristics that I mentioned. And especially because it's so close to the Bay Area. And, you don't have the Bay Area prices. And who doesn't want to come down to San Diego, right? So I think what I see is, eventually a sustainable ecosystem where you have kind of it's anchored by, the presence of large tech companies that either have been grown organically here or that have, second or third offices here, and also early stage innovation that kind of sprouts out of those companies, right? So in order for us to kind of continue this cycle, I think we've got to have all the pieces in place. And then ultimately, hopefully if one or two venture firms that set up shop here as well. So, and you're starting to see that a little bit too.
And setting up shop is different than syndication. Can you walk us through what syndication means if we are building something in San Diego or anywhere across the world or nation and syndicating with other angels and other VCs? How does that all work?
Yeah, well, I think that's, syndicating is a really great way to expose people, capital that's not in San Diego to the investment opportunities that we have in San Diego. So, to your point about syndicating, it's basically just working in parallel and investing together with other either individuals or groups. So venture groups, seed groups, angel groups, or individual angels. And that's something, you mentioned, we do a lot here locally. So we'll syndicate deals with we'll syndicate deals with Tech Coast Angels. We'll syndicate deals with other individuals who we know. Then also we will syndicate with venture firms that are outside of San Diego. And so every time we work with another party, I think that kind of helps bring a little more attention to what's going on locally. And it also, gives the company more perspective of, hey, there's life beyond San Diego. So sometimes, we live in such a perfect world that it's hard to get outside of our bubble. So it's always good to have a reality check from people that are investing all over the US or all over the world.
I know that I've syndicated as an angel investor with other angels. So I became more of a lead, making sure that I have all the investment documents done, that we share efficiently and effectively to another angel. But how does that work in the VC world? And especially in that early stage. I love that you're really early stage. You are an early stage investor in the VC world. How does that work in that early stage between VC and VC?
I mean, it's similar, right? Typically there will be a VC that will lead a deal and they will go out. Sometimes they'll want to take the entire round. So sometimes they may not want to syndicate, but if they feel like either the risk is too high at that particular moment, or they feel like they want, for strategic reasons, other VCs to come in, then they'll go out and either ping their network or they'll ask the entrepreneur to say, okay, what other venture firms are you talking to? Because typically an entrepreneur is talking to, 15 to 20 different sources of capital at any given moment. If an entrepreneur is lucky, they may have more than one term sheet. There could be multiple VCs that want to lead. They could be competing for, either all of the round, or they could be competing for a piece of the round. And usually, depending on what the entrepreneur decides to do, they'll go with one term sheet. And then if that VC decides they want to syndicate, then they'll reserve however much of the pot that they want to take. And then they'll open it up to strategic, either venture partners or strategic capital. And they pretty much are, it's an open conversation with the venture firm and the entrepreneur with who they want to take the money from and how much of each party's money that they want to take.
Perfect. And I know that one of the ways that I have syndicated and learned about who's out there is through networking at the Angel Capital Association, and also just, making sure that I know who's out there, who's investing in the same sort of things that I'm investing in. How do you connect those pieces for Seed San Diego?
Yeah, I mean, every time we meet a source of capital, whether it be an individual angel or a venture fund, we always profile them. So we try to figure out what types of investments they like, what stage, what industry, how much they invest. And from there, we have a database and we log everything. And when we see deals that will fit their wheelhouse, we'll send them, either an executive summary or a deck and just ask them what their interest is. We try and keep relationships with other sources of capital pretty fluid because, you want to be front of mind and you don't want to kind of like slip away. And you always want to just make sure you're able to help, other investors because it always comes back, right? So.
Yeah, we've talked about that at length about really making sure that connection and that collaboration and how you're interacting with them is pristine and that you're giving them good value on the entrepreneurs that you're sending to them. And I know that that's very important as an angel investor. Do you want to say anything else about that?
Yeah, I think part of it is you don't want to spam people, right? Because I hate when people spam me. And so you want to really make sure that the deals that you are sending, if you are validating them and you are advocating for them, you've done your homework. And so I think that we have a very high bar for deals that we share with other potential syndicate partners. And typically we won't share a deal if we're not going to go in it ourselves. There may be, extraneous reasons why we don't want to invest where I think it might be good for another company if they have a different investment thesis. But a lot of times, we'll definitely take a really hard look before we share a deal. And, we also want to make sure that we're not wasting anyone's time. So, I always try and be as transparent as possible when I do send a deal. If it's something that we're investing in, then, I don't try to sell it too much, but I also, I try to be realistic about, okay, these are the things we like about it. These are the risks that, that may be presented. If we don't invest in it, if we decide not to invest in a deal and I'm sharing it, then I'll be just as honest as well. So kind of add a little bit more perspective to our side than just here's a deal and, take a look at it.
And that kind of evolves from that thought of smart money for the entrepreneur and for the angel, correct?
Right. Yeah. So you want someone who really understands your business. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you want someone who understands your business, who's going to be able to add value, who's going to be able to introduce you to capital, to potential customers. But I think as an investor, you also want to think about how you can add value to a particular company. And so one of the things that we do at Seed San Diego is, we're always looking for ways that we can contribute. And sometimes we may pass on a deal because it could be a great deal, but we just don't feel like there's much that we can do. And in that case, we say, look, you're great and you may be really successful, but that's not part of our investment thesis. So, we can't invest at this time. So I think from an investor perspective, it's always, you're always trying to do analysis on the company of what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and then we take it a step further in terms of, okay, among their weaknesses, like where can we plug in and how can we really help?
Yeah, and towards that end, when something really aligns to your investment thesis, typically, how do you really add that value and contribute to the startup? What's typical?
It just depends. I mean, it depends on what the startup needs. Every startup is so different. Some startups we will help very heavily on the front end. And then they just need to get up and running, get product market fit, and then they kind of get unleashed and they go on their own. Other startups, it's intermittent, right? So we'll talk to them a lot for a month. I'll talk to them, 3 times a week for every week, 3 weeks in a row. And then I won't talk to them again for another 6 months. So it just depends. And it also depends on the help that they need from, each of the partners have different skill sets. So, they may need to talk to me, or they may not need to talk to Tanair, who is an expert in tech. or Doug, who has, a digital marketing background. So he has connections with agencies. So it just depends on kind of what their needs are at any particular time.
I know that some investors require, and of course, require is in quotes, that they would like to have updates from their startups. How do you feel about that? About, that's kind of like busy work, but at the same time, I feel like that's nice updates to get from startups.
Yeah, I think an update is a really good way for the entrepreneur to engage the investor. So a lot of times investors are passive, and so by sending an update, you're kind of keeping your company at the top of mind for an investor. For us, we're pretty active, but we still appreciate the updates, and I really like getting updates from companies that we're not invested in. I think that's, a really strong way of being able to market your company to a potential investor because they can watch your progress over time. I think that there's an art to updates, right? So I've seen there's all sorts of updates out there. And like you said, people can spend hours and hours on them. I think there's specific information that you can provide an investor. What's your growth rate? What's your run rate? What are the key milestones that you've achieved since the last update? And then any sort of help that people can offer, right? That people can give you. So it doesn't have to be really long, but I do encourage entrepreneurs to do them because I think that it's a really good way to keep the communication lines open.
I love that. And I think that I also have to listen to that as an angel investor, is that I let my entrepreneurs know, hey, I would love to hear from you. And the ones that do, I can actually leverage my network better for them. So on our side, I actually love it. And I say, hey, if you would love to send me some of those bullet points, and then we can actually leverage what I'm doing, or I'm going to a conference, or I'm going to a meeting. How can I know more about that startup?
Exactly. Yep.
Perfect. So I think that we have kind of covered all the things that we wanted to, really having a great perspective about being a VC in San Diego, and how you were able to become a VC and how passionate you are. So anything else that you would like to talk about on the Seed San Diego side or the San Diego ecosystem in general?
I think you and I both share a same mission in that we would love more females to invest. And I think that at first it might seem daunting, but it's one of those things where, I think it's actually very aligned with how women think and what women want to accomplish and achieve. And so I think being, an angel and early stage investor is something that, you can do one step at a time, but you're also really helping someone, right? So it's not this like super risky it is a super risky proposition, but it's also the perspective in which you're looking at it. And I think a lot of the women who have kind of made the leap and said, okay, I'm going to start slowly, discover that they actually really like it, and they have a talent for it. And I think part of the reason for that is because being an early stage investor, the earlier you are, the more important it is to have a really good judge of character. And I think as women, and this is obviously a generalization, but we are pretty good at assessing character, and we have a high level of discernment. And I think that's something that is a skill that we pick up over years of socialization and observant, and I think that's something that is overlooked a lot when it comes to what makes a good investor. And then I also think that in terms of how rewarding it is, like I personally love to help people. Like that's my nature. I'm just, I really get inspired by and excited when I'm able to help someone do something. And so I think as an investor, like I feel like that's my role, is just supporting and helping. And I think a lot of women feel the same way. And so I think I would just encourage, anyone who's thinking about it to, just try it.
Yeah. And that trying how much of that is, how much are we talking about sometimes in that trying phase?
Well, I think there's really great resources out there right now where you don't have to put a lot of money on the table. So Pipeline Fellowship, which I know you went through their program, that's a $5,000 investment. There's platforms right now like Seed Invest. Those often have, $5,000 minimums. There's also even just, some of these new crowdfunding equity platforms where you can do as little as $100, right? I mean, something like that, where you obviously aren't going to be as involved, but you can track the company over time. I think that there's different ways that you can just like kind of dip your toe in the water. And I think that it's becoming, I wouldn't say mainstream, but it's starting to become something that women are interested in. And, there's enough of us out there now, and I think that we're accessible enough that we would be happy to talk to anyone as well who's interested in it. I know I would be, so.
And I think that goes into those skills that female angels have. Like you said, you're accessible. I'm accessible. What are the other skills that you've seen yourself or others that is different than what we've seen traditionally?
Well, I think it's kind of a marrying of a few skills, right? So it's having the analytical skills to understand, okay, what specifically about this business is going to make it succeed in a tangible sense, but then also the intangible, like, does someone have an X factor, or do they have, some sort of social skill that is going to allow them to kind of outbeat their competition. And then I think just the way that, I think about things is I take a more holistic perspective, what the business is really, really strong at and what are the holes of the business. And, the founder or founders, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and, how do we build kind of the strongest foundation possible around, these holes or these gaps. It's not a specific skill, one specific skill, right? It's kind of like this marrying of different skills. And that's in building anything. You've got to find people that are complementary to you. And that's why I think it's, to have more female investors is a good thing because, we're complementing the male investors. So we've got to also work with them, right? It's not just let's be female investors and only work with ourselves.
I love that you brought that up because I invest with other males as well. So I love that you brought that up. Is that we're not trying to be siloed. We're just doing a twofold of, let's say, working together, but then also trying to inspire other women to actually activate their capital.
Exactly, and I think have the confidence to do that. I think a lot of women think, oh, I don't have a traditional finance background, and I'm just not qualified. My point is, well, that's a lot of times in the very early stages, you don't need a finance background. It's a lot on whether you believe in someone or not. One of the most important skills in early stage investing is analyzing someone's potential versus, looking at the finances or looking at the numbers and statistics. And so, Paul Graham writes in one of his essays that if you can, accurately analyze someone's potential, then you'll have a pretty solid portfolio of high performing companies.
Perfect. I love that. And that kind of juxtapose into that early stage is more risky, but we as women kind of have that intuition that we need to be confident of listening to.
Exactly.
I love that. So I think that we're kind of at the end of our podcast almost, but I have a rapid fire final 4 questions for you. And so the first one is, what's your favorite angel investing resource?
Yeah, well, I mentioned Paul Graham earlier. I think he was the founder of YC, Y Combinator. I think his essays are amazing. They're very inspiring. They have a ton of great nuggets, and I try and read all of them.
Perfect. I love that. What's your favorite book?
So I would say it's tough to pick one book, but I have a recent book that I read that I really like called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's by Daniel Kahneman. And it's basically the science. You would like this as a PhD. It's the science behind why we make decisions And a lot of times it's subconscious decisions that we're not even aware of. And that goes a lot into also, there's a lot of correlation with investing, and how our brain makes investment decisions. So I really liked that. I thought it was just a very great insight into your brain.
And that decision-making power that you have.
Exactly. Or that you don't have, because your automatic system is taking over.
That's awesome. Who has been a major influence in your life?
I would say, definitely both my parents. My dad, for sure, he immigrated to the U.S. from China and basically started, his own real estate company from nothing, and has made it really successful, and, is very much an inspiration to me. So that's why I wanted to get into business. I always wanted to be a businesswoman, even though I didn't even really know what he did.
But that was a wonderful role model for you to emulate and say, I want to be that.
Yeah. And I think, he, even though I was obviously female, like he was from the, very earliest I can remember, he always told me, you can do whatever you want to do. And he told all of he has 3 daughters, so I have 2 sisters, but he told all of us that, it was like, you want to achieve what you want to achieve, just, go for it. And, if you think it can happen, you got to work for it, but it will happen. So he's definitely a really great inspiration. And my mom as well. She had a career. She was a full-time mom, but she had a career before she had us. And, she is the epitome of kind of like a working woman who gave everything up for her children. So I definitely respect that a lot.
Very inspirational. I think that's also what your father and mother imparted to you. You said, if you think it will happen. You've thought of a better San Diego, and you've helped create the best San Diego ecosystem.
Thank you, Sylvia. That's very sweet of you. Yeah. I couldn't do it alone. I do it with people like you.
Yes, that's why we're all working together on this.
Yeah.
And the last question is, what does abundance mindset mean to you?
Interesting question. I wanted to Google that, but I didn't. So the first thing that came to mind was, personally, it's filling my life with meaningful things that fulfill me, and, that will make me happy in the long run. So I think those sort of things take a lot more work, but are exponentially more rewarding. And, for me, it's trying to cut out kind of like all the, what I call empty pleasures. One example is just like, I recently decided I'm going to go on a social media cleanse, because I was like, I'm just wasting too much time on Facebook. So I don't even open the app anymore. I probably miss a ton of stuff, but, kind of ridding myself of that, that sort of quick fix, endorphin driving activities. And then, being more present. So when I'm around my son, or my family, putting the phone away and living in the moment.
I love that. Very, very insightful as always, Allison. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate your time, treasure, and talent all the time. So thank you again.
Thank you, Sylvia. Great chatting with you. Thanks for having me.
What an inspiring conversation we had with Allison Long Pettine, a venture capitalist in San Diego. We talked about many things, but 2 things really stand out. One is, what does the San Diego ecosystem look like from an investor perspective? There was 6 things that we talked about. One is that startups are capital efficient here in San Diego. They're scrappy. Number 2, there's a loyal talent base. Number 3, there's a collaborative culture amongst both the startups and investors and the relationship between the two. Number 4, there's a balanced work life. Number 5 is that we communicate our wins efficiently. And number 6 is we syndicate with smart strategic investment partners that are part of our extended network of angels and VCs. And the second aspect that we talked about was that what are the skills that female angels have naturally that really benefit them from being early stage investors? We know that it's risky, but there's a couple of things that Allison pointed out that really points to how well we do as investors. One is that we are a good judge of character. We have high level of discernment. We are observant of all of the aspects of a startup, from market to the innovation, to what the product is or what the technology is. And number 4 is that we want to help, and that mentoring role that is so vital for an investor to have, we as women do it well. So Allison Long Pettine is an investor, and she invests in San Diego and technologies that make a difference in this global economy. Thank you for listening to and subscribing to the She Invest podcast. Go on over to sheinvest.com for the full show notes for this episode, as well as any resources, websites, we know and opportunities mentioned during the show. With your Sign up for the sheinvest.com newsletter to learn about events like our annual HERA Venture Summit during the month of September, and our She Invest California monthly investor circles to grow the best. Thank you for your time, talent, and treasure that we can have.